Anyway, Trump's interference could now derail an already delicate negotiation. The House Judiciary Committee, which is communicating with the special counsel's team, has proposed a date for Mueller's testimony. It's next week, though nothing has been finalized. This comes as a new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll shows that 60% of Americans say Donald Trump has been dishonest in his handling of the Russia probe. Only 37% say he's been honest and truthful. That seems about right. Meanwhile, almost 500 former federal prosecutors have signed a public statement affirming their belief that the evidence of Trump's obstruction of justice is, quote, significant. The statement says each of us believes that the conduct of President Trump described in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report would, in the case of any other person, result in multiple felony charges for obstruction of justice. That's 500 prosecutors. To look at these facts, quoting further, and say that a prosecutor could not probably sustain a conviction for obstruction of justice runs counter to logic and our experience. I'm joined now by Harry Litman, a former federal prosecutor and contributing columnist to the Washington Post. Susan Page is Washington Bureau Chief for USA Today. Joy Ainsley's National Security and Justice reporter for NBC News. And Donnie Deutsch is the host of the news show Saturday Night Politics on MSNBC. Donnie, let's just talk about chutzpah. With the Attorney General saying no problem, Robert Mueller, who wrote this report, who was the basis for all discussions for 2 years, he can testify. I'm not getting in his way. Then Trump on Friday says, I'm not getting in the way of the Attorney General on this. He can let him prosecute. And then over the weekend, he has the nerve, the stones, to come out and say, I'm not going to let the American people hear from the guy who wrote the report that I'm using to exonerate myself with. Can he get away with this?
It's gone.
Politically or constitutionally?
And, you know, before anything else, Robert Mueller is a U.S. citizen. And when we get to the point in this country when forget that he's a special prosecutor, forget that he used to run the FBI, forget that he's a Boy Scout, forget that he served in Vietnam, that we have a president that says a U.S. citizen can't even speak up. Just it defies logic. Trump's biggest fear right now, what is the Mueller report? It's a inanimate 448-page document that basically was served up by Trump's in-house attorney general, who basically said nothing here, keep on moving. And basically Trump has been saying is a witch hunt and a hoax. And basically you have Democrats complaining, and Trump says, oh, they're just out to get me. Once Mueller testifies and he's asked a question, Mr. Mueller, is this obstruction of justice? Not that a president can be charged. And now you have an animate human object saying yes. That is a very definitive other side to the story. Right now, Trump has just been producing the show himself. Once there's a human, a credible human, saying those words, it lands in a very different place for memoriam.
Let me go back to Harry, the expert on this question of the Constitution. Can this president tell this special counsel you can't talk to Congress? Can he physically do it by saying you're not going to take any documents with you because they're government property? You're not going to take any staff help with him because they're working for the government. And you, buddy, are still working for the government. You're not going to. Can he physically stop him from showing up on Capitol Hill and telling the truth?
Physically? Well, he'd have to do a bear hug because there's no legal way. Forget about it. First of all, Mueller will be a private citizen, as Donnie says, in a matter of days. Second of all, Barr has said there's no problem, and he will be hard-pressed with Barr, even though I know he's backed off before to let it happen. But there's no basis. There's no claim of privilege. It's all out there. He can hope that Mueller will revert to his sort of laconic Boy Scout self. Yeah. Keep him from showing up in the chair. No, it's going to happen.
Well, Joey, I think that's what Trump may be up to, if not denying him access to all the documents he worked on, denying him. It's pretty tough to go in there and sit in that chair all by yourself playing the Lone Ranger, trying to remember 400 pages of documentation, trying to remember every word you ever spoke in that report without any help. He could do that, right? Well, but he also can intimidate him, as Harry just said, and say, you want to play partisan politics? You're doing it. That means I'm saying if you get out there and argue against me, you're a politician.
Look, I think in this case, what might be true is that we're actually going to get less from Robert Mueller than we would expect. There's so many unanswered questions.
Well, I'm going to ask you, stick with the question. Can Trump keep him from talking?
He can keep him from talking more when he is still a special counsel. But as Harry points out, in a matter of days, he could be a private citizen. And like in many days in this administration, we're going to law school, there is a split on what executive privilege means once you're a private citizen. There have been former officials like Sally Yates, like Jim Comey, like Don McGahn, all of whom were threatened with executive privilege, but it wasn't clear they did not have to adhere to it. This White House believes they may still have to adhere to it, but other people say no, executive privilege will not get to them after they leave, except when it comes to certain conversations that the president can protect, grand jury materials, which we know will already
Did you ever
be
have a
out.
conversation with Robert Mueller?
No, I guess he had the written answers. Those would be about as far as they went.
That was a joke. He said, I don't remember anything. This is a great standoff, a great constant standoff. It's great drama because the president's saying, I'm not letting any of my people, broadly defined, any executive public servant, I'm not letting them testify on the truth.
You know, you can have a confrontation, you can have a delay. I don't think you can derail having Robert Mueller testify, and I think Robert Mueller probably will testify. I think it will be up to him, and it's hard for me to imagine that after all these years of him not speaking, of us not hearing his voice, his take on things, that we aren't going to hear it. I mean, I think you saw his willingness to do it with the letters that he sent to Barr, raising objections to his summary. I mean, that tells you something about Mueller's own view of what Barr has done so far and what Trump has done so far in mischaracterizing the conclusions that he came to in his report.
I want to get back to the personality and the character. The character looks pretty good, Donnie, of this guy, this special counsel. Most people think of him as a straight arrow, a Boy Scout, the whole thing, all the good stuff, Eagle Scout, a guy who's a public servant all those years as head of the FBI and everything. But I'm not sure about his public political personality. Is he the kind of guy? Is he really the Robert De Niro character on SNL? The real look, you see him walk. He walks like he's got that bag always with him. He's always carrying the attaché bag. He's got business in there. Do you think he's the kind of guy who come out and say, "Okay, let me make it clear: the president obstructed justice. He's a felon. The Congress ought to act." Will he do that?
Interestingly enough, I think Barr has actually been a great friend to the Democrats because pre-Barr, I wouldn't be quite sure at this point. I think he sees it as a moral imperative. I think Barr will push him possibly to go to places that he hadn't gone. And once again, he was a very, very strict by the DOJ guidelines, didn't put it. But if he's asked the question, once again, not volunteer, Mr. Mueller, we're not saying you would prosecute, but as a prosecutor, were these laws broken? Is this obstruction of justice? Under oath, he's going to answer. And I also think his kind of non-charisma, his anti-Trump, his boringness actually works to his favor.
And the question also, did you exonerate this president on obstruction of justice? His answer is, because that's what the Attorney General says you did. And then he says the Attorney General lied. Is he going to get, Harry, will he do that? Do you know the guy enough to say what he's got the nerve to take on the Attorney General, who's his boss, and say, don't trust this guy, he's lying?
Yeah, so he's got the nerve. He will not say, don't trust this guy, he's lying. And 3 months ago, he wouldn't have even approached it. But I agree with Donnie. It's not simply that he's been so denigrated by Barr, but the values he's lived his life for, of rule of law and the like, are really in jeopardy now, and he knows it. So, yes, I think he will push. For Mueller, he'll push as he hasn't before, and he'll say something like what Donnie says. This is obstruction, what the 500 former prosecutors say, because it is not a close call, as they say. There's no credible professional judgment, Barr notwithstanding, that can go any other way here.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.